Shabbat Shalom, Israel. Hope everybody's having a blessed day on this day of rest, this holy convocation. Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Tree of the Field. We got Brother Noah Joshua in the house. Thank you for tuning in. Man, it is a blessing to be a part of the remnant, adhering to not only the commandments, but the law, statutes, and precepts of the Most High, as he has given us this instruction to keep this set apart Moedim. All right, so today we're talking about the art of seduction, the master of seduction. And today's teaching will give you a bit of understanding why sometimes you fall into these snares, even sometimes knowing better. Okay, so Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy Yah. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord, or the Master, made heaven and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So when we look at seduction from a Western perspective, a Western definition, it being a noun, it is the action of seducing someone, a tempting or attractive thing. Is actions that announce sexual intent, even enticement. Okay, so when we break these down at the minute level and get into the actual tenets of seduction, you have entice, which is a verb, means to attract or tempt by offering pleasure or advantage. Okay, allure. This is very important when you think about the master of seduction being Hasatan and the allure that he will pretty much use sin to shine a light on it to make it look appealing. It will have a certain lackluster to it. Okay, the power of attraction or charm. And that's the allure noun. When we look at allure, the verb, it is to attract or influence someone by offering something that seems beneficial or pleasurable. And when we get into this, you will understand how Hasatan, pretty much used the serpent, and the serpent through allure was able to attract, Chua, by offering her that she would be like a god. Okay. And in the garden, that seemed beneficial to her, or it seemed pleasurable. When we look at seductive behaviors, lingering eye contact, subtle contact through touch, and active listening, when you think about the word and it talks about the eyes are, the gateway to the soul, lingering eye contact is a part of seductive behavior. Touch, you have to be careful to who you allow, touch you. Active listening. Okay. What are enticing behaviors? The actor luring or tempting someone into doing something by promising them something they want. And you have to think, for us at a fallen state, if we are not walking in his law, statutes, and commandments and fearing the Most High Yah, you have no defense for the seduction of Hasatan, just like, Chua did in the garden. And then that same tactic was applied by her to Adam. Genesis chapter 3, verse 1 through 6. And I recommend, if you do not have the 54 book Apocrypha, you definitely get that, because the story that you read in the reduced 66 book version of the King James, or just the section in Genesis, is a very diluted version of Adam and Eve in the garden. And I'm going to just pretty much highlight some of the context from the life of Adam and Eve. And you can find that in the 54 book Apocrypha. So Genesis 3, 1 through 6. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord thy Yah had made. And he said unto the woman, yeah, hath Yah said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? He's proposing this as a question. And then in verse 2, Chua answers this and said, and the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Yah have said, you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. And you'll get more context if you can even Google the life of Adam and Eve, and it will pull the full context of what this very diluted version of translation doesn't cover. Verse 4, and it says, and the serpent said unto the woman, you shall not surely die. So he's putting that thought in her mind in that moment that you can go against the will of the Most High and there will be no consequences. So this is the allure, this is the enticement. Verse 5, for Yah doeth know that in the day you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open and you shall be as gods. And you have to think about this because we're going to drive this home today, why that is so appealing today, of definitely in this daytime and hour of people wanting to be worshiped, people wanting to be idols, people saying, they're the God of this. And this leads into a whole bunch of idolatry. Okay. You shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Prior to this moment, they did not know evil. They did not know evil. They did not know transgressions. They did not know iniquity. They did not know lawlessness. Okay. In this moment, the serpent beguiled Eve by offering her the power to be exalted to the gods. But underneath this beguilement, she couldn't discern he was ultimately offering her death. She would have maintained her immortality if she wouldn't have been engaged in this dialogue with the serpent. So she couldn't ward off just by having that conversation, that dialogue with Hasatan, and you'll read in the life of Adam and Eve that Hasatan trained the serpent on how to beguile Eve in the garden. He gave the serpent the tactics to tell him how to do it. Okay. Verse 6, and the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree to be desired to make one wise. She took the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And this is what I'm saying. This is why I tell everybody you have to just reading the 66 books or just reading this version in itself, which is missing 14 books, especially from the KJV. A lot of these other versions don't even have it. It's very diluted. It doesn't give you a lot of context. Okay. I want you to show you at this point that seduction goes a lot deeper than you realize. There is even seduction and deception amongst organized religious brands as well as in advertising. At this point, I want to read a couple key tenets out of the 54 book Apocrypha as to add more context to the life of Adam and Eve. And that's the book that I'll be referencing from the Apocrypha. This will drive home the point of why you need to study and prove all things. Things are definitely not as they appear, and you cannot defend against an attack you didn't know is occurring. It's like being on a battlefield, but thinking the war is over, and the whole time, it's nothing but a tactic to lure you in. And that's what seduction is. In chapter 11 of the life of Adam and Eve, it is brought to light that because of Eve's greed, her mouth was open to entertain the serpent and have certain conversations with the serpent. In chapter 16 of the life of Adam and Eve, it details how Hasatan schooled or pretty much gave the serpent all of the tactics and tools necessary in how to deceive Eve, how to exploit her weakness. This provides way more context and how strong seduction can be. It is important to understand why Hasatan was kicked out of heaven. And this is a question that if you have never thought about or don't understand, this is very important in your understanding. This will give you understanding as to the level of deception and seductive skills he has. And this is why I said the master of deception. Okay. Most times in organized religions and different denominations and brands, we only know Hasatan or Lucifer or the devil or Satan from the perspective of, always being evil. And biblically, until you study deeply, you won't realize that that's not always the case, or that's not entirely the origins of Hasatan. Hasatan was not always a fallen angel. Okay, Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12 through 17. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, this is Hasatan, and the reason why he was kicked out of heaven. He said in his heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of Yah. I will sit down also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High Yah. So when you think about that, Lucifer got kicked out of the kingdom for his pridefulness. He tried to exalt himself beyond the powers of the Most High. And that's an act of showing that you are unsubmissive in that moment. And you cannot be an unsubmissive servant. That's just not going to work. Verse 15, yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. And this is the same tactic, that he implied on Chua in the garden. He said, you will be like a god. And the same tactic that he used on her goes into the reason why he was kicked out of the kingdom, because he tried to exalt himself to the level of the Most High. Verse 16, they that see thee shall nearly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake the kingdoms? Verse 17, that made the world as wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof. That opened not the house of his prisoners. Ezekiel 28:16. By the abundance of your trading, you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. Therefore, I cast you as a profane thing out of the mountain of Yah, and I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of fiery stones. Hey, I'm experiencing definitely some power outages, but if you guys can still hear me, let me get a 10 in the chat. And I might have to go to my cell phone. So it is no coincidence that he seduced Eve by offering her the same offer that got him kicked out of heaven. In Genesis 3:5, he tempted, beguiled Eve with being exalted to the level of Yah and having all knowledge of good and evil. Prior to this seduction, she had no knowledge of evil, but only good. Because of her greed, hey, so we got a 10. We got Christina Wilson said we got a 10. So we're good to go. Because of her greed, she fell into his seductive snare. So Hasatan is going to use seduction to set a snare for you. And this week I've been harping in on some of my videos in the fact that Hasatan will give you the allure that you can get away with it. You got to think, as a parent tells gives a child specific instructions to do something, and time passes and you realize the child didn't do it, and then when you come back and you're pretty much verifying and you engage the child, they might acknowledge the fact and say that they did it, but the fact that they thought they could get away with it, that is the allure of Hasatan. And that plays into adulthood, sneaking out of the house, doing things that you don't have no business. See, Hasatan is the worst getaway driver, because he's going to leave you stranded when all of the doggone persecution or the judgment comes for the act that you thought you could get away with. Okay. In chapter 20 and 21 of the life of Adam and Eve, it informs us. Hey, thank you, Favor and Mercy. It informs us that Eve immediately knew she was in transgression after she bit the fruit and called out Adam because she was now uncovered, unprotected. There is no living in iniquity, living in lawlessness. There is no living in transgression while having the covering of the Most High. Just doesn't exist, because at this point she was in transgression by herself, and it details how she seduced Adam using the same seductive tactic the serpent used on her. And oftentimes men aren't, if you aren't walking in the fullness of your discernment, if you aren't exercising discernment and you let your guard down, you can't stand the seduction of a woman. So she seduced Adam using the same seductive tactic the serpent used on her. Biblically, this is why the woman on her own is the weaker vessel, because she is more prone to the attacks of seduction from Hasatan, while man is highly prone to the seductive attacks of a woman. Hasatan is going to use the woman to attack the man, and we have an example of that through Adam and Chua in the garden and the serpent. First Peter chapter 3, verse 7. Likewise, you husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor to the wife as unto the weaker vessel, as being heirs to the grace of life, that your prayers not be hindered. It's not saying that just women in general are weak, but is the weaker vessel. So as husbands, you need to understand where the attack can come from, and then understand at a spiritual level, in spiritual warfare, how these attacks are going to take place. Okay. Genesis chapter 3, verse 13. And the Lord Yah said unto woman, what is it that thou have done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. Beguiled. When we look at beguiled, it's H5377. That's the etymology of the word. It means to lead astray, to delude, or seduce, or deceive. So when you think about it, Hasatan, being in the kingdom at one point, he knew the ways of righteousness. He was a messenger of the Most High. And it wasn't until he tried to exalt, himself to the level of the Most High Yah that he got kicked out of the kingdom and became a fallen angel. So when you think about the skill set, the level of seduction that he's willing to use. This is why I titled this The Master of Seduction. He will tempt you with iniquity and transgression, and you will genuinely be thinking that you're capable of doing this and won't face any consequences. You have to think unaccountable people that don't want to be accountable for their actions. In that moment, you're not going to force them to be accountable, because in that moment, they're still under that seduction of they don't even think that they're called in that moment. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 25. Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. It's a reason for this. It's the reason we have this, because the Most High Yah knows, and we look at the fallen state of mankind and man in general. What will make when you look at a harlot, what will make a man that's focused on a walking a certain way give in to, the ways of being a whoremonger? It's seduction. Matthew chapter 6, verse 22 through 23. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, the whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is the darkness? So when you think about the eyes, not only the eyes and the ear gates, man, these are very important to understanding the art of seduction and how the master of seduction will use not only your eye gates and your ear gates to be able to beguile you. 2 Kings chapter 9, verse 30 through 33. And when Jehu was come to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it, and she painted her face and tired her head and looked out the window. A lot of people don't understand that because they haven't read the book of Enoch about the fallen angels teaching the painting of the face. So there's so much context that's outside of this that people forget, and will give you context of what the fallen angels actually taught mankind. Okay. So she heard of it. She painted her face and tired her head and looked out the window. And as Jehu entered in the gate, she said, "Had Zimri peace, who slew his master?" And he lifted up his face to the window and said, "Who is on my side? Who?" And therefore looked out to him 2 or 3 eunuchs. And he said, "Throw her down." So they threw her down, and some of her blood was sprinkled on the wall as the horses, and he troded her underfoot. So you might say, man, that's pretty harsh. That's a harsh judgment. But they stepped on her and rode over her with the horses because of her deceptive manner. That's the reason she was painting her face as a disguise. When you think about concealer conceals blemishes. And when I if I was to actually go, if you Google all of the tenets of face paint, or what would modern day be considered makeup, you look at foundation. What is the intent? You look at concealer. You look at the beautifying of the eyelids. There's a seductive manner in that. Proverbs chapter 30, verse 12 through 14. This is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their filthiness. There is a generation, O lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. There is a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaws teeth as knives, to devour the poor from off the earth, and the needy from among men. Okay, this leads into when you think about just the words and the wordplay and the trickery that Hasatan used on Eve, and her having experienced that, she turned right around and used those same tactics against Adam, and he fell for it. He fell for it. So this is why when I went over the word before, husbands, deal with your wives according to knowledge, having knowledge of this. You need to always be improving on your your leadership, and not only being a protector, but in the physical, but in the spiritual also. Because what voice may she be listening to? What seductive voice? And then the attack is going to hit you. That's a clear-cut example. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 6. For of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with diverse lusts. This is why a man that has a gift of gab can seduce the draws off of a woman. This is and want to fulfill no duty to her at all. It's seduction. So mankind at its fallen state, men and women have mastered the art of seduction in order to live in transgression. And this passage right here gives you an example of it. You got to think, which creep into houses and lead captive silly women. It didn't say wise women. So you have men using the art of seduction to take advantage of silly women laden with sins, and it says led away with diverse lust. So when you think about that, your whole goal of creeping into that house is to fulfill your lust. You have to think about it. You know, a just a woman by herself with no covering is an easier target for the enemy than a woman who is covered. You know, if a father actively stays in his daughter's life and pretty much has eyesight as far as where she is and what she's doing, it's not easy for somebody to creep in and lead her astray and to beguile her. So this plays into your leadership as a man, as a father, as a husband. We are in a daytime and hour where people are so focused on their love language that the one and only love language that the Most High Yah cares about is obedience. They disregard and are focused on these which Hasatan will use as entry to attack you by seduction. You know, when you hear people talk about love languages, and if they are not in a union that is recognized by the Most High Yah, I want you to understand that Hasatan is listening. So when you pretty much say or tell somebody what your love language is you're giving them an entry point to be able to seduce you and attack you. Okay. So there's pros and cons to this. And it's very good in a union that the Most High Yah, recognizes, to have that level of understanding. But if you're just out here casually dating, fornicating, being sexually immoral, that's the last thing you want to do. Is for somebody that is trying to fulfill the lust of their flesh, you want to tell them your entry point and where you are weak at. Okay. Words of affirmation, using words to praise or compliment a loved one. Okay. See, Hasatan can easily beguile you by telling someone who looks like Forrest Whitaker they are fine as Usher. See, if you fall for that, that's on you. Or someone that looks like Forrest Gump that they are attractive as Ben Affleck. He will tell a woman that looks like Oprah that you favor Halle Berry. He will tell Precious that she favors Rihanna. Now, most people know this is far-fetched, but the level of seduction is so great that cannot withstand. They can't defend it against those attacks of deception, because in that moment you are pretty much just overwhelmed with, I can't believe they believe this in their mind. They actually don't believe it, but it is a tactic of seduction. Quality time, spending time together one-on-one. When you don't have duty and obligation at a high priority in your life, it's very easy to be beguiled in marriage chasing happiness. There's nobody yet that I've said, when people come from the stance of my happiness this as a man, my happiness this as a woman, I say, hey, go find me a book, chapter, and verse where it says you're supposed to be happy outside of fulfilling, duty, obligation, and responsibility. And they never come back with it. They can disagree all day, but they won't dispute it. Hasatan will use someone who has nothing going on in their life. Now we're talking about how can you spot this? So he will use somebody that has nothing going on in their life, no job or doing nothing productive, to seduce you with an overwhelming amount of available time. You are in a covenant recognized by the Most High Yah, and out of nowhere, you got somebody that's got all this time to spend with you. It will appear as their only objective in life is to spend time with you. Who has time for that in this daytime and hour if they're doing something productive? So you can see how just out of these two love languages, you can be attacked through these. Physical touch. Hey, you definitely, I encourage to have boundaries, because as a man or a woman, people are trying to seduce you and touch, embracing you in certain way. Some people want to hug you and breathe all up on you. Hey, I'm a firm believer in a handshake, because I don't know you like that. And I know we're on a spiritual battlefield, so that's just a boundary. Physical touch is showing love through physical contact, like holding hands, hugging, or cuddling. As men and women, you must be careful of whom you let touch you, embrace you, because demonic spirits can be transferred through touch. Okay. What are the 5 levels of touch? When it comes to touch, there are 5 dimensions, or what they call gears, that contribute to the connection between partners. Okay. Affectionate, sensual, playful, erotic, and intercourse. So when you think about touch, if you're going through something as a man or a woman, say your spirit is down in the moment, you're in the middle of a tribulation, there's a type of touch that is seducing for that situation. And you would say, man, this person is so nice, but ultimately they're trying to fulfill the lust of their flesh through seductive acts. And I'm breaking down the tenets of how this is done. Okay. Acts of service, doing helpful things for a loved one, like cooking, cleaning, or running errands. Okay. Imagine you need some air in your tire and have no idea what you're doing. And a handsome man approaches and says, where's your man? It's a shame you out here doing this as a woman. So for a man that has the gift of gab, he knows how to use this as an entry point. This is a deceiving seducer's entry point. Okay. And vice versa. There's if you flip these roles, they can be used by man and woman as in acts of seducing. Receiving gifts, giving or receiving gifts that symbolize Keywords symbolize love, that produce a feeling of love and care. They don't equate to actions behind love. I could give a dang about the feeling of love. You're gonna have to show me, because the Most High Yah says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. So his is action based. Imagine you are not receiving gifts out of nowhere, but only in specific occasions. Out of nowhere, someone other than your spouse starts showering you with gifts that you couldn't dream of ever receiving in your current status of life. NFL football tickets, an abundance of flowers sent to your workplace. I want you to think about that. When you look at some of these movies, uh, people watch this stuff being infatuated with iniquity and lawlessness and be cheering for the most reprobate, you know, things in these movies, and you're like, wait a minute. It'll make you think about some of these different narratives and agendas behind the stuff that we watch with our eye gates. Psalms 58:3. The wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies. So when you think about that, as pretty as you want, if you don't fear the Most High Yah, keep his commandments, you have people, contrary to how the baby pictures look and all of that, that they're born wicked, estranged from the womb. And it says they go astray as soon as they are born, speaking lies. So when you think about what is the goal of some of these lives, to lead astray, to beguile, to deceive, to seduce. Matthew 24:24. For there shall arise false Hamashiachs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. So even the ones that are the very elect of the Most High Yah have to be cautious of the seduction, of the beguiling of false Hamashiachs, false prophets. And it's the difference between prophesying and prophesying. Telling folks that they got all the is. I'm telling you, if you're somebody that's very easily beguiled around New Year's, you're gonna fall for these prophet line where people are telling you this your season, this is gonna happen in this season. And if they're saying this stuff is gonna happen in this year, and 5 years has passed and you're still listening to this, you got prophet lied to. How is it that the Most High Yah told them to tell you that, but for some reason they didn't hear the voice or hearken to the voice of fear me and keep my commandments? So just in general, you have to be mindful of this. If you approach the world as everybody is good, nobody's trying to deceive me, you will always be trying to figure out, why would they do that to me? Why did this person lie to me? Why did this person deceive me? If you approach it from what the book actually says, mankind is at a fallen state. We're pretty much living in iniquity. You look at where we're living today as modern Babylon, you won't have those questions. You'll understand. Mark chapter 13, verse 22. For false Hamashiachs and false prophets shall arise and show signs and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. So there's that. I gave you two different places where the same context is being displayed. And it says the reason they are showing these signs and wonders is to wow people. When seduction is taking place, you will be wowed and wooed. So I often talk about how a lot of these religious brands, when you look at what you're seeing, you're not seeing a pulpit. You're not seeing a altar in these churches. You're seeing the same kind of stage setup that you see in a Broadway show. You're seeing the same light. This is a fabricated vibe. And in this fabricated vibe of showing these signs and wonder, you're sitting in the audience. Woo, man! I've been in some places of worship where they got smoke, like those smoke cannons that make, when the pastor starts saying certain words, smoke starts coming out. Man, it's nothing but signs and wonders to seduce. And it says, if were possible, even the elect. So even if you have knowledge of the truth or walking in righteousness, walking towards the narrow gate, you have to be mindful of the seduction. Second John chapter 7. For many deceivers are entered into the world. You would be a fool to approach life from any other aspect than this. For many deceivers are entered into the world. So just because somebody is wooing and wowing you with fair speech, that's a art of seduction. The book tells us many deceivers entered into the world who confess not that Yahushua HaMashiach has come in the flesh. This is a deceiver and the Antichrist. Okay. Hasatan the deceiver is crafty enough to seduce the average religious person into not keeping the commandments or fearing the Most High while telling them they can inherit the kingdom while living a life of transgression or unrepentance. This is the reason for so much false doctrine, because it has deceiving and seductive powers, even to the point people subscribe to religions, denominations that are far from biblical. How is it that we got all these different denominations? We got 3, 4 different religions using the same book, and can't none of them tell you where what they're teaching and what they're doing is in the book? It's all deception. Second Timothy chapter 4, verse 3 through 4. For the time is coming when the people will not endure sound teaching, but will have itching ears. They will accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own passions, and will turn away from listening to the truth and wander off into myths, thinking that mankind and knowing according to the word is at a fallen state. People don't want to hear the truth. So don't be surprised when they don't. So people, you have to think, if you are wanting to hear fairy tales, wanting to hear inaccurate false doctrine, if you want to hear damnable doctrine, the outcome of that is you're going to endure more tribulations, because there's no truth in what is actually being taught. It says people will turn away from listening to truth and wander off into myths. Like I gave you that scenario. You got somebody like Forrest Whitaker. You don't want to hear the truth. Hey, you look like somebody clothed that resembles Forrest Whitaker. No, you want to be lied to. You want to be told, man, you really think I look like Usher? And people fall for that foolishness all the time. You got somebody that portrays more of Precious. They want to hear they look like Rihanna. There in that moment, you don't want to hear the truth. Getting your ears tickled is more important. And Hasatan uses that in religion to tickle people's ears, to tell you, hey, you don't have to do this. Even if you make them book, chapter, and verses, a lot of these people that teach damnable heresies, they won't never come back. They just flee. First Timothy chapter 6, verse 3. If anyone teaches a different doctrine and does not agree with the sound words of our Lord Yahushua HaMashiach and the teaching that accords with godliness and the teaching that accords with godliness. So when you think about that, a lot of these pulpit pimps, they don't even address the fact of how did that divider get in between what they call the Old and the New Testament. The Most High Yah, his prophets or his disciples didn't put it there. Man put it there, and that's another deceptive practice. You have people that say, well, I'm New Testament only. You must be Old Testament. Well, the doggone in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31 through 34, it talks about, who the new covenant is for, but yet they won't acknowledge that. And this is why the word says, if it does not agree with the sound words of Yahushua HaMashiach and the teaching that accords with godliness. What is the teaching that accords with godliness? That is the Torah. Second Corinthians chapter 11, verse 13 through 15. For such men are false apostles. So just because somebody takes a title, just because somebody's got a degree in divinity, what if they don't have the Ruach HaKodesh? What are they being led by? And people are easily seduced by titles. People are easily seduced by status. What do you think? What kind of spirit do you think a groupie has? It's the status, it's the titles, it's the fame. For such men are false apostles, deceitful workmen, disguising themselves as apostles of Hamashiach. And no wonder, for even Hasatan disguises himself as an angel of light. Well, you'll say, well, yeah, they got an anointing. And not even realizing the Satan himself, Hasatan himself, is going to disguise himself as he has a true anointing. So it is no surprise if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. Their end will correspond to their deeds. So if you get sucked into this foolishness, you're going to get exactly what you're supposed to get. And the judgments of the Most High Yah and Hamashiach are just. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. Beloved, this is crazy how it starts off. Beloved, do not believe every spirit. So you have to think about it. In a fallen state, when we don't fear the Most High Yah, we don't keep his commandments, we don't study the word, we are very gullible. This flesh is gullible. Believe anything. I want you to understand, man, somebody tomorrow is gonna go to a place of worship and just get deceived, get beguiled, get doggone seduced, and told that something's in the book that's not. And in ignorance, because they won't go back and read, they will believe it. And they will fall into that snare. It says, but test the spirits to see whether they are from Yah. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. Many. He didn't say few. Many false prophets have gone into the world. But don't nobody want to believe that their doggone teacher is a false prophet. Especially they teacher don't fear the Most High Yah, don't keep the commandments. Instead, they tell you that you ain't got to keep them. You ain't got to do this. And you sitting up thinking that there's not many false prophets out in the world. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9 through 11. Or do you know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of Yah? Do not be deceived. Neither the sexually immoral. Hasatan, will seduce and pretty much use the allure of sexual immorality to beguile you. Oh, just because society has evolved and nobody looks at it that way. The Most High Yah says he's not going to change. He's the same today, yesterday, and tomorrow. He's not changing. His ways are higher than our ways. But Hasatan will exploit your ignorance. He will exploit the fact that you are in a fallen state. And when you think about, it says, neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor men who practice homosexuality. In this daytime and hour, people are being told that you can bring this stuff to the kingdom. You don't have to repent from it. You can keep on living like that and have eternal life. Nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards. You have to think, you have Christians out there that are so seduced by false doctrine and false prophets. They think that if alcohol touch your lips, you sinned. Meanwhile, they are completely displaced from the sins of Torah. And the question is, if Hamashiach turned water to wine, would Hamashiach tell you to sin? See, now you're at a crossroads of what you think is the truth versus now you're forced to go a path of either you want to keep living that lie or you want to find out the truth. And it says, nor drunkards. Being a drunkard is a sin, nor revilers, nor swindlers. Swindler, you got to think about what a swindler does. A swindler is a hustler. It says, will inherit the kingdom of Yah. So these are people that won't inherit the kingdom of Yah. And it says, and such were some of you, but you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified in the name of our Lord Yahushua HaMashiach by the Spirit of our Yah. Matthew chapter 7, verse 21 through 23. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. So this is Hamashiach letting you know that if you have not done the will of the Father, you ain't inheriting the kingdom. So you have all of these people that say, well, Jesus never said do it. And he's telling you, this is Hamashiach himself is telling you that you are supposed to be doing the will of the Father. When did the will of the Father start? Did the will of the Father start in Matthew, or did it start in Bereshith or Genesis? See, these people have deceived a lot of people. And because you don't read, because you have been told you don't need to look at that, that's the deception right there. That's the seducing right there. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And you have to think, the Most High Yah wasn't speaking to them. These people were prophesying in his name. That's what makes a false prophet. You prophesy. And in that name cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works. Verse 23, and then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you that work iniquity. Etymology, lawlessness, transgress the law, violate the law. These are people that have been seduced, and particularly a lot of these people, they have a form of godliness, as the book says, but they deny the power thereof. They're led of Hasatan instead of being led of the Hakodesh, the Ruach. That's why in these last days, man, you want to ensure you are walking in the ways, hearkening to the voice of the Most High Yah, his precepts, his commandments, his statutes, his ordinances. So you're not easily seduced. But when you don't know what his will is, it's very easy for somebody to tell you what you have to think what prophet line is. Somebody's lying to you about what God told them. They're making it up. It's fabricated. And because you don't know the word of the Most High Yah, you don't know what his will is, it's very easy for them, for Hasatan to do that and to use people around you to do that. See, when you are studied in this word, you're not gonna, especially when it comes to the etymology, you're not gonna let people use these doggone $20 Christian words that don't even link to any etymology, any historical language, and woo and wow you. You can't even get your mind warped. Like I've often said it, man. A concordance or a lexicon is a Christian pastor's worst nightmare. I'm telling you. And some of these jokers that continue to teach damnable doctrine, inserting into the text rather than taking out what it is we're supposed. Some of these jokers would off themselves if they really caught that smoke, and they don't want it, because behind it you have to think how many people get seduced out of giving money. How many people know? You got people that know that the word tithes means tenth, but your Sunday sun worship pastor is not going to tell you that tithes biblically was not money. Why? Because they're trying to seduce you out of it. One part of the service they're not going to miss is that financial part of the service. Guarantee that. And you see how people are seduced, guilt tripped, pretty much given the allure of that they're going to get something in the end. They say he's going to pour you out a blessing, using that to deceive people. And this is how deceptive Hasatan is. Okay, Matthew chapter 25, verse 23. His Lord said unto him, well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into joy of thy Lord, or thy master. So when you think about that, in order to hear this, you're not going to be given in to all of these types of seductions. Man, you got to stand firm, stand on your square of righteousness. And this daytime and hour, man, there's all kind of damnable doctrines sucking people in left and right. And the seduction, instead of you going through the narrow gate, the straight path, which leads to salvation and righteousness, these forms and tactics that the master of seduction use is pretty much nothing more than to get you to go through the wide gate. He's trying to get you a detour, trying to get you to go on a detour by making it seem like you're going to end up at the same place. I talked about it this week. Hasatan will seduce you, beguile you, deceive you, and here you are coming out of a bank you didn't rob because he put the thought that you could get away with it in your mind, and you went forth. And soon as you get out to the getaway car, the driver pops the trunk, you throw the money in there, and before you can get in the car, he then pulled off. And now you have to deal with that judgment. You have to deal with it. So seduction is real. Seduction is very real, for men and women. Women, you need to understand where your attack is going to come from. That voice you hear that God told you to do something and it goes against the word, God didn't tell you to do that. The Most High Yah didn't tell you to do that. That's Hasatan seducing you. Men, you are easily seduced by women, and a lot of your tribulations is gonna come. You have to think if you are constantly in fornication, sexual immorality, you're gonna be seduced, and it's gonna cause a lot of tribulations, a lot of stress, a lot of doggone headache. It's not until you are within the will of the Most High Yah that you can withstand the schemes of Hasatan. When we look at the example I gave you in the beginning, Adam or Chua could not withstand the schemes. This is why I said, man, you better work on your doggone leadership, get some sort of backbone, because it's gonna come down to when the attack happens in your house, will you smack that doggone fruit out of her hand and say, what the heck is wrong with you? You want to damn us all? Adam didn't have that. So, men, it's very important that you understand where the attack can come from also. Going over those love languages, the enemy is listening. You didn't told all these men and women your love language, and yet every one of them situation is backed with sexual immorality and fornication. It's like you're giving the enemy the layout of how to seduce and deceive you. This is what we got to watch out for. Definitely in these last days, because I'm telling you, Hasatan is trying to knock somebody's head off in the most subtle way. When we go back to the beginning, let me see what this thing said, because this is very important. It said, now the serpent was more subtle. You got to understand, man, the serpent was more subtle. He slid in, he blended in, he was smooth operator. His lips was dripping honey. When you look at the Proverbs 7 woman and it talks about her lips, drip honey, but her ways lead to death, the serpent is gonna drip honey in your ear. And you're gonna be like, man, his words sound so sweet. That's how he's gonna package iniquity. And he's gonna seduce you with it. You have to think, in traveling, you have people that say that they love the Most High Yah, they keep his commandments, but they will travel and get seduced into the cultures of everybody doing this is a major thing we want tourists to do. Wait a minute, what you want me to do? I'm not bound down to that doggone statue. Who is this? You start looking behind some of the stuff, especially when traveling. Man, there's seductions at every turn of the life. Somebody is trying to seduce you. When you look at Apple spends a majority of its money on psychology, understanding the way the human mind works. So you have to think, you can have where's my doggone phone at? You can have a doggone phone 6 months old, and that Apple commercial has been geared to seduce you into thinking you need a new one. Yet you will take your doggone rent money, your doggone car note money, your mortgage money, whatever, your grocery money, and you'll be down there trying to get another phone. You done got seduced into so much stuff that you really don't need. And at the end of it, it's going to leave you feeling empty. Hasatan will seduce you with pleasure, but he's never going to be the one to tell you about the pain that you will experience post pleasure. That's the Most High Yah in his word. If you do not hearken unto my voice this day, guard my commandments, which I command you, all these curses will be added unto you. You will be cursed to the third and fourth generation. Hasatan ain't gonna never tell you that. Hasatan is gonna be the one saying, no, you can have all this unprotected sex as a man you want. You won't get pregnant. You won't catch no STD. And soon as you done it, next thing you know, the pain comes. So I approach a lot of situations in life like this. You know, every opportunity, every job opportunity. You look at the music industry. The book of Sirach says, observe the opportunity, be cautious of your soul. Because if you are seduced by an opportunity, you're going to end up selling your soul. Just as we hear many people, the dude from Snowfall, the black dude from Snowfall, he talks about in an interview how he summoned demons in order to play his role. And he had nightmares for weeks after that because he summoned evil forces in order to maintain a certain opportunity. All these opportunities are not for you. Some of them are just, if you are infatuated with money, like I said, the last thing on your mind is gonna be keeping the Most High Yah's law, statutes, and commandments. You're easily seduced, and once Hasatan knows that, he will exploit that. You know, every Friday, I give a safety brief to my soldiers before the weekend kicks off. And we was just talking about this week. I was talking about married men and women. Hasatan, no matter what you're going through in your marriage, Hasatan's going to use somebody that seems like they're this and all be all. And I'm telling you, you're going to think you can get away with it, but you will get caught. It's guaranteed. Hasatan will seduce you with the thoughts of pleasure, and he's never going to be the one to tell you the pain that's come from him. You're going to mess around losing your family. You ain't going to be able to see your doggone kids. Might even have your name slandered. Don't fall for it. I got a video up that I posted probably about 2 weeks ago where this man fell for the seduction of a woman that told him she wasn't going to tell his wife. And I showed you in the video where she comes forth telling. I said, it's only acts of seduction. So knowing this going forth, man, guard your heart, stay in the will of the Most High Yah, and keep your head on a swivel when it comes to all of these different subtle tactics that Hasatan uses against us. Man, I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your Shabbat, and I hope you have a blessed week starting off tomorrow with Yom Rishon or Yom Day 1 Sunday. Close to the Yom Ministries, kicking it gun, barrel straight. Oh, yeah. Yeah, these power outages.